Welcome to another video for Design 103 CAD Fundamentals. If you're taking CAD Fundamentals as an 8-week course, then this past week you've had to complete the midterm exam in class. And so for your lab assignment this week, for the online assignment, I've given you an opportunity to complete a couple of extra credit assignments. So if you need some bonus points to boost your grade back up a little bit, you have the option this week of completing Extra Credit 1 and Extra Credit 2 online if you feel that you need them. Again, these assignments are optional, so if you're doing fine in the class, then you may elect not to do these. But if you are interested in doing them, then I'm going to put together a video here of Extra Credit Assignment 2, which is drawing 4-3, and the book calls it Weave. So we're going to look at how to draw this as part of your extra credit assignment if you choose to draw it. Now, one of the things that's really important in this drawing is that you know how to use the rectangular array command. Otherwise, this is going to take you long time to do and probably would end up being nearly impossible without the rectangular array command. Now if you look, this is drawing 4-3, which is from a couple chapters ago, so hopefully you've got the hang of the rectangular array command by now, and this will be fairly simple, but if not, we're still going to walk through it. So to start out with, I'm going to jump back to AutoCAD, and this whole drawing is going to be completed on my visible layer. Since we don't have any hidden lines or center lines, I'm just going to be using the visible layer for this whole drawing. And the first thing I'm going to do is create this outside square that is 6 inches by 6 inches. Then I'm going to create this small hatch pattern on the inside, which will then array all the way through the square to create kind of a weaved pattern. So if I go back over to AutoCAD, you can see that ultimately that's what we're going for. So some people in the past have drawn exactly what you see here and they forget to array the hatch pattern. So make sure when you get done, this is not what your finished drawing should look like. It should look like what you see in AutoCAD here, where you have this full interwoven pattern. So to start with, I'm using my template again, and I'm going to make sure that I'm on my visible layer, and I'm just going to put a 6 by 6 square in here. So I'm going to use the rectangle command and choose my starting point. And I'll type in @ using Shift and the 2 key, and I'm just going to type in 6 tab 6 and hit enter, and there I have my 6 by 6 square. And the next thing I need to do is draw the hatch pattern in the lower left corner. And if we look at our drawing, we've got kind of a series of offset 1/8 inch and 1/4 inch gaps here to create this hatch pattern, and it's basically just lines that are drawn in here and then trimmed out to give this optical illusion. And you can see that they're all built inside of a 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch square. So what I like to do is I like to draw a 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch square in here temporarily to help me get the lines in here where they're supposed to go. So back in AutoCAD, I'm just going to draw a square here in the corner using the rectangle tool again. I'll type in @ 0.75 tab 0.75 and hit enter. And this just makes it a little bit easier to find the endpoints of some of the lines while you're drawing. So the first thing that I'm going to do is create a line, and I'm going to make a vertical line here, but it needs to be 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of my rectangles. So I'm going to use what's called the O-track feature here, and I'm going to hover over this corner point. And once you see that it pops up and says end point, then I'm just going to drag my mouse over to the right. Now I haven't clicked anything yet, I'm just hovering with the mouse. So I'm going to move my mouse over to the right, and I'm going to type in whatever distance I want to come over to the right before I start my line. So I'm going to type in 0.125 and hit enter, and you'll see that AutoCAD starts my line exactly 1/8 of an inch away from the point that I O-tracked off of. So my start point for my line and this original end point that I selected are exactly 1/8 of an inch apart, and that's how you use the O-track feature. It's built in AutoCAD to prevent you from having to draw construction lines constantly when you're creating objects. If you were drafting this by hand, you would most likely have to draw construction lines in there and go back and erase them or draw them very lightly so they don't show up. But in AutoCAD, we don't have to draw those construction lines thanks to the O-track feature. So I know where the start point for that line is, and I'm just going to carry it all the way up until it hits the edge of my square. And I'll click there and hit escape. And I'm going to do the same thing to create a horizontal line that's 1/8 of an inch up off the bottom of the square. So I'm going to use the line command again. I'm going to O-track to this point just by hovering, move the mouse straight up, and I'm going to type in 0.125, hit enter, and you'll see my line starts exactly where I need it now without having to draw any construction lines. And I'm going to come straight over to the right and click again, and then hit escape. And now we have those two lines spaced out exactly where they should go. And at this point, I can use the offset command to go ahead and finish out the inside of this. So I'm going to use the offset command now, and I'm going to set this to 1/8 of an inch. So remember, when you choose the offset tool, the first thing it's always going to ask you is, what should that offset distance be? And then you have to pick what you want to offset. So I'm going to start by offsetting this vertical line, so I'll choose that. And then I have to choose which side do I want to offset it on. Well, I want to offset to the right side, so I'm going to click over here anywhere on the right side of my original line. And since I've got this set up already, I'm already in the offset tool, I'm going to go ahead and offset this horizontal line also straight up. So I'll choose it, click above it anywhere. Alright, now I have to change my offset distance before I can continue. Because if we look back at our drawing, we have 1/8 of an inch gap here, 1/8 of an inch here, but we have a bigger gap in between here and the next set of lines. So if we look at our hatch pattern, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. You can see that our first two gaps are 1/8 of an inch, here and here, and then the middle gap in between, the bigger gap, should be 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to go back and change my offset distance, this time to 1/4 of an inch. So I'll choose the offset tool. I'm going to type in 0.25 as my distance this time. And I'm just going to offset those lines one more time to the right and to the top. And now we're going to go back to our regular distance of 0.25 or 0.125 again, excuse me. So this last gap from here to here should be 0.125 again. So in AutoCAD, I'll use the offset tool one more time, and I'm going to go back to my original setting of 0.125, and I'll offset to the right again and to the top. And so there we have our hatch pattern. We just need to trim it out to create that optical illusion. And at this point, I'm done with the square here, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. It served its purpose. And we're ready to do trimming. So I'm going to left click, right click anywhere in the window, and now I can left click to trim. And this is where you'll want to really study the drawing and make sure you're trimming out the right lines. So this corner down here, I need to trim out the two horizontal lines here and here. So I'm just going to do a window around those and trim those out. Now this next intersection, I need to trim the vertical lines instead, so I'm going to trim these two out. And then moving up here to the top right corner, I need to trim out the horizontals again, these two. And then finally, over here, I need to trim out the verticals in the top left corner. So I'm going to trim out these two verticals. And then once I'm done trimming, I'll hit escape. And you can see how we've built that hatch pattern now to create that overlay look that you see in the book. And finally, the only thing we have to do now is use our rectangular array to create this hatch pattern. So I'm going to select this with a blue window, and I'm going to go up here and hit the array button. And if you're using AutoCAD 2013, you'll probably find the rectangular array to be a little bit easier to use. They fixed some of the problems in 2012 with the rectangular array command, and so it's a lot easier to use now. In the 2012 version, you'll have to choose the array button and then pick two endpoints before it will put that array in for you. And then you can go back and use the regular toolbars at the top to adjust that array. But in AutoCAD 2013, it's really nice because as soon as I hit that rectangular array button, AutoCAD's going to bring that menu right up. Now in AutoCAD 2012, like I said, you'll have to pick a couple of endpoints before you get to this menu up here. But once you see this menu pop up, everything works the same between 2012 and 2013. So regardless of which version you're using, you're going to see this menu somewhere. So looking at our drawing in the book, we should have a total of 8 rows of hatching, both in the horizontal and vertical direction. So I need to make 8 columns and 8 rows. So I'll type in 8 for my columns and 8 for my rows. And there you can see I have the right number, but the spacing is all wrong. So I need to go back and look at what my spacing should be. And remember, AutoCAD is always going to input the spacing right here as the distance from the bottom of one row to the bottom of the next row. It's not the distance in between. So it's always the distance from the bottom of one to the bottom of the next, to the bottom of the next, to the bottom of the next. So people get very confused always, and they think that this is the distance in between the rows, and they try and set it to 0. But that's not what you want. You want the distance from the bottom of one to the bottom of the next. So looking at our drawing, we can see that the height of this is 0.75, so we want our next row to start right here. So we should put in a distance of 0.75 right here. as our between distance. And then you can see that it pulls those columns together nicely just like we want. And if I do the same thing for my rows, you'll see them pull down vertically and eliminate that spacing in between there. Okay, so that's what you're looking for. Now if I had gone back and put 0 in here, thinking that this was the distance in between, AutoCAD's going to give you an error message, and it's going to tell you that it cannot do a distance that small. So if you put 0 in there, it's going to try and help you realize that that's not the right dimension. So a little bit of a safety net there for you on that. Now once you get this array in there, the only other thing that I like to do is go to the Home button, and I like to explode these arrays when I'm done with them, because remember that AutoCAD will turn everything into a block, so it looks at it as one big piece. So if I was to move this or copy it, it's all going to go together, which sometimes is nice, but sometimes it's not so nice. So I generally like to explode these when I'm done. And remember, you can do that by clicking the Home tab and using the Explode button right here. And so now it's all individual line segments again. So depending on what you've drawn, you may or may not want to explode it. So that's it for this drawing. Really pretty quick and simple if you know how to use the rectangular array command. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'll save it to my flash drive like always. So there you go, you're ready to upload to Blackboard, and remember, you always want to upload the .dwg file, not the backup file. So good luck, and we'll see you next time.